Tony Todd, Tony Todd, Tony Todd, Tony Todd, Tony Todd. Yes, we said his name five times, and he appeared. Now, among many other things, you know Tony as the hook-handed lead from Candyman, but his extensive credits are a testament to his versatility as a thespian. They include film classics such as The Rock, The Crow, Night of the Living Dead, Final Destination 1 and 2. He also appeared in the multiple Academy Award-winning Oliver Stone film Platoon. On television, he has had prominent guest roles including Boston Public, For the People, The District, NYPD Blue. He also appeared on 3 iterations of Star Trek. That was The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. And most importantly to a nerd like me, I believe you're one of the few actors to appear on all 3 of the longest-running North American sci-fi series, those being The X-Files, Stargate SG-1, and Smallville. And very recently, I enjoyed hating him as the voice of the villainous Zoom on The Flash. Hey, The Naked Porch is proud to welcome Tony Todd.
Hey, Jay, how are you? What's up, Naked Porch?
It has been a long day. Today, for posterity, tell them what today is.
Well, today is the first day of summer, and tonight, I know it is 9:24 PST time, is summer solstice. For those of you that are spiritually minded, very important moment. Just check your clocks according to PST. I think you're in Midwest, are you?
Actually, I am in Central Standard Time.
Central.
Ray was in Eastern, and I was going by his time zone. So he's in Westchester. I was in Alabama. And where are you?
You're in Alabama now?
I am, sir. I'm a native Alabamian.
California.
But you were born in Washington, D.C., weren't you?
Correct. Yes.
So I was going to ask you...
how much you made online today. But
what comments now? All right.
About toys that you owned or something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, I was actually wondering about the political atmosphere when you were growing up in Washington, D.C.
Well, I left. I was born in D.C. and I left when I was 3 years old, and was rescued by my aunt who saw that I needed a home and she couldn't have children, and she took me under her wings. So I was raised in Hartford, Connecticut. This is New England, in a wonderful state.
Oh, all right. What was it like growing up in Connecticut?
It was beautiful, man. I had 4 seasons. I had unfiltered, unrequited love. The most gorgeous, gracious woman I've ever known. Every summer she put me in a different program. So I had science programs. I was a Boy Scout, Life Scout, actually, 2 merit badges short of life. Went to my first World Jamboree in Tokyo, Japan, when I was 13.
Wow.
She kept me active, and then she led me to a love of theater, which is where I am today.
I share the love of theater. That was something I did my whole life. Now, is that when you decided to become an actor, when you were about 13?
13, 14. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had a growth spurt. Like, I grew literally 6 to 9 inches over the course of a summer. Who knows how many inches I'm going to grow this summer? But, so I was totally useless to the athletic department because I wasn't in control of my body, my mind, my limbs, most importantly. So an English teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, took pity on me, and she, I was very good at certain subjects, things that I was interested in. History, English, not math, by no means, although I do know how to make change for $1. But when it came to, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, I knew that it had no relevance to me. God bless the people that do, and there are engineers and are physicists today, but I wanted to be an artist. So she handed me a copy of Shakespeare's The Tempest, and that was it. It was like reading a graphic novel come to life.
Well, I do love the graphic novels. So what was the first aspect of The Tempest that attracted you?
I just loved the grandness of Prospero and his relationship to the island, to Caliban most particularly, and this whole crumbling of power and trying to maintain some vestige of dignity in an uncivilized world.
Oh, well, that's always relevant.
Yeah.
Now, your first starring role, I just want to fast forward a bit. You did Night of the Living Dead. That was your first starring role. And
yes, it was my first lead role on film.
I heard there was a funny story about you and the director. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just saying, I mean, I was a star in my own mind for the first moment I stepped on stage, and before I got my first film role, which was Platoon, I had been on at least 25 different plays in New York City and New England area.
Oh, that's great. I heard a funny story, though, about you and the director when auditioning for Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm. Tom Savini.
Right. Can you tell me that?
Well, I was working on a film in Pittsburgh with Forrest Whitaker called Criminal Justice, and he was the one that told me that, you're doing a remake of Night of the Living Dead, and you look like you belong in Dwayne Jones' family tree. And my only day off was a Saturday, so I went running over to the production office. I actually saw Tom crossing hallways because nobody would give me an answer. I kept asking for size, and I kept asking for an appointment. It wasn't like I was just a new kid coming out of the swamp. I had already had Platoon and a couple other films under my credit. Plus, I was cocky as hell. So I grabbed Tom, and I just started, he says, I think I already got a solid. I said, no, you got just before you just listen to me. And I just did an off-the-cuff monologue about what it was to escape from where I was and to end up in this place where we were all sharing the same fate. And apparently it worked. That was a Saturday. I had the offer by Monday.
Now, the director, Tom, about how tall would you say he was?
Tom is about 5'9", maybe.
And you're 6'5".
Yeah.
So when you grabbed him up,
I didn't pick him up, but I just wanted him. I needed his attention. I needed to let him know I was serious. Some casting directors say never use a weapon in an audition. I've never done that. Never come in ill prepared. I've always been prepared. But you have to have a sense of chutzpah. You have to know where the line is. When a trapeze artist is walking across the wire, he's not thinking about, am I going to fall? Am I going to hit somebody? He's thinking about getting to the other side. So in that moment, I needed to convince Tom Savini that I was Ben for the modern remake, and apparently he got my intention.
I love Night of the Living. He did, yes. I love Night of the Living Dead. We did a local theater performance of that recently, and my good friend Stefan Passmore played your part. I got to give Stefan a shout out. He's a local radio. Would you mind giving Stefan a shout out?
Stefan, what's up? Giving you a shout out, man. Local radio station in Alabama somewhere.
Yes, Stefan's been doing radio for years. He was so jealous when I told him I was going to get to talk to you. Big fan. So,
awesome.
So that was in 1990 when they put out Night of the Living Dead. And then just a couple of years, well, I guess it was just been a couple of months later, you hear about a film called Candyman.
No, Candyman was 92, so there was a 2-year break. I did Star Trek in between. I did my first appearances on Next Generation. And,
you did? You did?
Yeah. And my son was born. For some reason, I tell working / struggling / starving actors all the time, there are several things that increases your luck. Children is one of them. Having the correct spiritual center in your life is another. And 3, trying to make friends out of enemies is the most essential for the continuation of our civilization. So with me, my son being born, all of a sudden I no longer had fear about getting a job. Because of my training, I have an MFA in theater. I know how to prepare for a role. I know how to dig into a role. I know how to pull what elements of a role correlate to my personality and how to subtract the differences. So I just worked constantly. I did a lot of the old Viacam shows, things that you didn't even mention, like Father Dowling's Mysteries, Simon and Simon. I was working every week. So I had put in my time of paying my dues in New York City, because when I got my master's, I taught for a while. I taught for 2 years the wonderful teenage theater group called Free Me Troop Troop. They gave me all the incorrigibles that the high schools couldn't handle, and for 4 days a week, they would religiously met with me from 5 to 9 every night. So not only was I infusing with them a way to maybe escape the ghetto or life, city life, I was also reinforcing, what I had been taught. So finally I went to New York, and that was, I was lucky. I got my equity card within 2 weeks. less than 2 weeks actually, and you know, work theater. But theater, unfortunately, doesn't. You know, you make a living, you don't make a life. You know, particularly when you're starting. So I put in my time as a bartender in the theater bar in New York City called the West Bank Theater Bar. I'll never forget. And that's where the film stuff started.
I was mentioning your first appearance on Star Trek as Kern. So that was one you were cast in, and I was mentioning we actually studied that episode, The Sins of the Father, in college in my television appreciation class.
That's great.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to Dr. Mack on that one. She loved Star Trek, and that was really when I fell in love with the show. I had kind of been a Star Wars fan before then. But what about Kern? Are you into the fandoms? Are you deep in the fandoms with Star Trek or any of the roles that you play, or is it more or less a job?
No, they're never. Some things, they take on a life of their own. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek, so we meaning the producers and me, we knew we wanted to do business with each other. And I had actually auditioned 5 straight times before Kern came along. So when Kern hit, it was like one of those Hollywood moments. Walking off the lot out of the Marx Brothers building, and the casting director said, "Tony." And I said, "Yeah, what? I got to audition again for another character?" He says, "No, report to wardrobe." And it was like one of the most particularly joyous moments in my early career. And wardrobe in the Klingon universe, you know, you walk into this huge, massive, like called an airplane hangar, filled with nothing but Klingon boots, you know, body vests, and pants. It was great.
I've always loved their boots with the spikes on the toes.
Yeah. We mean business, you know. So, or it's easier to put brakes on an airship.
Well, I love the culture of the Klingons. That's why the Klingon episodes are my favorite. They're not exactly irrational people, but they have a very strong sense of pride and honor.
Yeah, and also duty. I mean, it's very Shakespearean, actually, because all of Shakespeare's characters, no matter even the noblest, are all flawed. And if pride goes before the fall, then that perhaps is Klingon's one, mistake. But in their pride, they are magnificent.
I agree. And what always stuck out to me about Kern was just how loyal he was to his brother, even when he disagreed with him.
That's how he was raised. That's what he's taught.
Exactly.
And Michael Dorn and I are friends to this day. As a matter of fact, I think I posted it online last week. I did a Star Trek Online version where Kern actually regains his memory and recalls being Rodek, remembers being Kern.
Oh boy, I gotta say, I was so shocked when they took away his memory. Now that's on a different show. That was on Deep Space Nine. But what was your thought when you read that in the script?
Well, by that point, I had done 6 episodes with them, so I just checked my availability and sent the script. Because if I had read that, I might not have done it. Because I did. So for me, but I didn't think that my brother would agree to do something like that. But I guess that's what makes it drop. I wasn't happy with that episode, although. At least it was closure for Kern, but I felt that there was another way to close the brotherly connection.
Oh, I totally agree. I didn't like it at all. I was also surprised a doctor would go through with that. But I guess they had to wrap up the episode.
This isn't standards, absolutely. But, it's TV writing. Who knows what the powers to be were thinking in the background. I had just finished doing The Visitor before I did that.
Yeah.
So, maybe my time is done in the legacy of the whole Star Trek.
I had always hoped they would go. Yeah, I had always hoped they would go back to Kern, and then maybe they just had to go off in other directions because you never know where TV's going to go.
Yeah. Arc and the Klingon War and stuff. You would have thought that I would be there for that, but I'm proud of what I was able to do. And to this day, wherever there's a Klingon convention or a Star Trek convention, I get quatlas from everyone involved.
And those are well deserved, sir. Very well deserved. And you mentioned The Visitor. I know that's probably one that you get asked about all the time, but that one emanates with me. Brings me to tears, really. That was kind of how I found you on Twitter, actually.
Ah, wow. Okay, yeah. Thank you for the continued support and the
Oh,
retweeting on
always.
Twitter. Try to do
Always.
the same for you.
We'll definitely post a Twitter link to your handle. If you're not following Tony Todd on Twitter, at the very least, you need to check out some good music suggestions from his feed, because I know I'm always looking at what you're listening to. Charlie Parker shows up a lot. What else do you like to listen to?
It depends on the day. It depends on my mood, and it depends today it was a lot of Prince. The little Georgia on my mind. You know, it depends on the mood, man. I try to hold back because even what I do tweet is nothing. Music is playing all day long for me when I'm not working. If I'm not, sometimes my work is just writing. When I'm writing on my scripts and stuff, there's music in the background. 24-hour news cycle can get really depressing really quickly. So I tend to turn to Twitter, not just for what's happening in the world, but I try to get a gauge of how people in our big planet are thinking, and I eliminate the negatives, and I just try to accentuate the positive.
That's awesome. I wish more of us lived that way. You said something that made my yes. And now my ears perked up when you mentioned the writing. Writing is my thing. You find me at J Sandlin Writer. I just released my first book about 2 months ago of alternate history with superheroes. Would love to send you a copy sometime, but tell me about what you're writing these days.
Well, I'm trying to, when I went to school, my MFA was actually in writing, not in acting. However, in the conservatory we're at, we had 5 different acting teachers, 4 different directing teachers, 3 writing teachers. So we were just exposed to the whole continuum of creative connectivity. So when I got released, always in my heart, I wanted to be a writer because I'm a shy person. I don't necessarily need public attention. But when I moved to New York, being 6'5" and being trained in theater, the roles just kept coming to me. And because of this 30-year career, I've actually put writing on the back burner, although I've always aspired to it. So, I got a couple of screenplays that I'm sharpening up. I had an opportunity to do one a couple of years ago. I just don't want it to be my first screenplay to be a horror script. Although
right.
I'm completely prepared to do horror. I want it to be more representative of how I feel about the world.
Right. I actually feel like I'm pretty at home when I'm writing. I might just be introverted, but I feel like I hang out with my characters.
Good. That's awesome.
And then eventually I have
to front porch and really listen.
And then eventually I have to step away from it because I'm tired of hanging out with some of them. But hey, back to
that's okay.
That is okay, yeah. Hey, I actually had a question for you about The Visitor, just to backtrack to that a minute. Is it true that you were cast as the older Jake because of a makeup test issue with Sarah Lofton?
That one, I don't know. I know that he wanted to do it. Sarah is a good friend of mine. I needed to do that role where I was in my life. The woman who raised me had just passed away, maybe 4 months, 6 months before I did the episode. So I was really inconsolable. I was like, she was my muse, my guide, my reality, everything. She saved my life. So out of the blue, they sent me the script. And it was like she was saying, you need to get up, you need to honor me, you need to remember my movements, you need to remember how.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. The beautiful thing about Star Trek is that we're all a connected family. And, and for those of us that do cons on the regular, you never know who you're going to see in first class. My last flight back, I was sitting next to LeVar Burton. Wil Wheaton was across the aisle for me. I see Marina quite a bit, even if we're not at the same place. It's the beautiful thing about America. You never know who you're going to meet in the next hub.
That is a good way of putting it. Hey, was What was Wil Wheaton like on set? You know, there's always this anti-Wil Wheaton backlash in the fandom. I love the guy, and I loved Wesley Crusher.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I know, unfortunately for Will, my very first scene as Kern was on board the Enterprise, okay? And one of my first lines was directed to him, okay, where he was at his speed. And I knew when I said it, because I'm a method actor, I knew when I said it, he didn't know how to take me because he had never met me before, you know? And I actually, I was just somewhere, I was in Detroit, Motor City Con, and he was there. And I apologized to him and said, you know, my very first Joe, I hope you got to real, but it worked. And I didn't apologize at the moment because I'm acting. I don't have to apologize for my choices or my intentions. But I was happy to be able to come to a life conclusion with him.
That is awesome.
He had an interesting life. You know, he was a child star. So
yeah, he was a child star. And I've loved the things he's been doing lately with us.
When we met, we talked about a lot of real life shit. So that was a good thing.
Good. Yeah, I love him on The Big Bang Theory now. I love him on the podcast that he does. It's fantastic. And, you know, you were on Star Trek. You're talking about the family. You were on 3 iterations of the series. On Voyager, you played that Alpha Hirogen hunter. That makeup looked like it might have been the most treacherous, was it?
It was. It was between that and the costume was the most trapping of all. I had to notify the wardrobe and makeup department 20 minutes before I had to go to the bathroom on that, okay? So that's how I felt about it. I mean, I don't know about you, but it doesn't come on call like that. I don't know 20 minutes before.
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, the Hirogen were a cool species. Voyager tried to do their own thing with the species, with the Kazons, and they had. I liked the ones that replicated by taking the dead bodies and reanimating them. I thought that was interesting, but the Hirogens were the coolest. And I was also wondering, was there ever any talk of you appearing on Enterprise? It felt noticeably absent without you. Never,
ever came up. Never. When it first came out, I was, you know, I assumed that I would be on it. And they only lasted 4 years. So by the second year, I realized maybe that's not going to be the thing. But I had moved on to other things as well. So, you know, I wish I had been on all 4, and I certainly hope that it'll call me for the new one, Discovery. But we'll see.
Yes. I know very little about Discovery. I don't think there's a lot out about it now. I think they said they've shown the ship, and I think they've said it's going to take place after Kirk, but before Enterprise, maybe?
Right.
And I'm very interested in that era.
What I'm happy for all the female fans out there is that both the captain and the first officer are female. So that's groundbreaking considering it's in the future. So all power to them.
All power to them. Of course, we know that we had Janeway was such a great captain, and in the Star Trek pilot, they had number 1, Michelle Barrett, as the first officer. Did you get to meet her? Or of course you got to meet her.
Yeah, actually, there was a show called, what was it called? That she was the executive producer of, Space something. It was shot up in Toronto. They took an old script of Gene, and they wanted me to be a regular on that. I can't remember the name of it now. It lasted 6 seasons, but it wasn't really good. And
I don't remember that one either.
Yeah, it's called Space 1999 Beyond, something like that. It wasn't very good, and I turned it down.
Well, so at that time you were, and at that time during Enterprise as well, you were pretty well into Final Destination at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, I was just busy doing. Yeah, I was doing a lot of independent films, and you know, I always return to theater. Not 2 years goes by before I'm doing a role at some regional theater or on Broadway or in New York. That's always will remain my first love. I just love the community of actors and writers and designers and playwrights and people that are trying to say something. And So that's my number one club.
Absolutely. Are we going to see you in any theater coming up soon?
Well, as you know, I started the year doing Sunset Baby at Theater Works in Hartford, Connecticut, my hometown. It was my first time returning there professionally in 25 years. That was a blast. Though it was hard, it was a blast.
It's Tony Todd Homecoming.
And then last year I was working on a one-man show called Ghost in the House about Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight champion in America, in 1905.
He won that title. I think it was 1909 that he won the title. I love boxing.
Yeah, it was 1904, 1905. Don't quote me exactly. It's out of my head at the moment. But they just made an inquiry for me about the Berkshire Theater Festival, which is a very wonderful festival that starts late July through August. But I don't know yet. But so I always listen when they call me.
That's awesome. Well, I will definitely be looking for that announcement.
People that don't know the theater have to understand that week's rehearsal, you're with the same cast. You know the script inside out. It's 8 shows a week. People think, oh, you got it easy. You try being emotionally connected, no matter, I don't care if you got a bad foot, you have a cold, the character doesn't. So you have to succumb that, and you have to give that audience, as a new audience, you have to give them that thing every night. It's not easy.
No, sir. Yeah, theater was the first love of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you that theater was a first love of mine too. I've never done anything like you have, but I have done community theater, and I was kind of the opposite because theater was my major, and then I kind of switched to the writing. And so most recently I did a drama, or a dramedy, I guess, a romantic one. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it was called Marrying Terry. Do you like the romantic comedies?
Yeah, I do. I don't remember that one. I don't know that one. Mary and Terry. I don't know that.
Just a funny show about two people meeting in a hotel room and they end up, falling in love. Then have you done many romantic comedies? Because you're so well known for your voice and your deep bellows, but in real life you're just a nice guy.
Yeah, I've had a couple, but usually, even when they're not, I'm more known for the dark things, and when I say that, I'm not necessarily horror, but just like I did a stage production of High Noon based on the famous Academy Award winning Gary Cooper role, right? We actually had a horse on stage. Okay, it was a wonderful thing, but that's dark, even though that was romance in the middle. But I also did Time of Your Life, which is a great Sororian play, but it's also dark. So I don't know. Even though I live my life trying to accomplish nice and light and happiness and sunshine, but there's something that people see in me that thinks that I can emphasize the dark.
And very recently, you played a villain. I said I love to hate him, but you were Zoom on The Flash.
Yeah, what did you hate about Zoom?
All right. Well, I'm a longtime Flash reader, and there's a bit of a discrepancy with the comic version and the TV show version, but I liked their reimagining of Zoom. Zoom was dressed like the Black Flash, the dark speedster. He was dressed like the one that brings the souls of the speedsters into the Speed Force. That was more of the Zoom they did. That was less of the comic Zoom, which the comic Zoom was more like the Reverse Flash in the first season. He wore the yellow suit in the comics. He was Thawne, the professor. I think they wanted to draw a distinction, so they went more Black Flash with your Zoom. I would just say I loved it. I've got your Funko over here next to me. And I love just like you said, the scariness of it. And I actually had a funny connection to give you. I don't know if this is a conspiracy theory, but I'm going to give it a try. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. You were in Smallville season 1 on an episode called Jitters. And Correct. You had a power that you could shake really fast or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've seen that one. But then on The Flash, you play the Zoom. You run into a coffee place called Jitters, and your power is that you can vibrate your hands through people. Now, I think there's got to be a connection there.
Okay, well, you're the first one to bring up that connection, and that's very smart. I had totally associated those two events. But that's interesting.
I was just reading up. I was remembering Smallville because I loved Smallville. That was one that was my high school years. I loved Tom Welling. You played a farmhand who was working for LexCorp, and you were trying to expose the evil of what they were doing to people, I think.
Yes, and I got exposed to kryptonite poisoning.
Ah, that was always the hazard every week on that show.
Yeah, right.
I think the CC they would have closed down all Smallville at some point with all that.
At some point, you would have considering it's that small. Yeah, but that was a good cast. I loved working with Tom and John Snyder, and again, you know, Vancouver shoots a lot of television, and that's 25 times I've been up to Vancouver. It's one of my favorite cities on the planet.
All right. So question though, what I was and you mentioned working on Smallville, getting to work with the cast, but on Zoom, you were a voice actor. And when you're a voice actor, do you get a lot of interaction with the live action cast?
Not at all. Not at all. When you go in for your voice sessions, usually they have the scene already taped and stuff. So you're just going off your instincts and the wisdom of the supervising sound producer. So we just had a lot of fun. Once we figured out where the voice lived, we would just do it. There was a couple of times where I actually did the voice before they shot the scene. So then they had to follow my lead. But all in all, but the beautiful thing was I was actually up in Vancouver last summer doing Dead of Summer for Freeform. So I got to go on visitor set, and we've all met each other, so they know who I was. And so once that's over, it's less work and more play, which is the secret.
That is the secret to any good life. I agree. Well, I was wondering about that, and since you mentioned it, which scene do you remember in particular? A scene that they had to follow your lead?
The scene in the police station where I catch the bullets, and that whole monologue portion is done before they shot it.
I was hoping you would say that because that was the best moment of that whole season.
Yeah, that was me. I wasn't trapped, so I could do what I could do.
And when your voice, yeah, I loved that part because Zoom had just put the hurt on the Flash. Like he basically said, there's a new speedster in town. I'm the most powerful, and the Flash can't do anything about it. This is my city now.
Yeah, look at your hero. Which is the underlying thing. You guys choose to idolize this, this teenager.
Have you ever, I don't know if you have any theater horror stories, but have you ever had any just someone drop the ball when you're on stage?
I've dropped the ball myself. Actor's worst nightmare is falling asleep backstage or being too comfortable. In my younger years, I was so ambitious, and a couple times I missed cues, training, but that's what training is about. You have to, in order to deserve a life in theater, you have to know what the rules there are, which is A, knowing your lines, B, knowing your characters, C, showing up, and D, closing the curtain, So once you understand that, but trust me, there are actors who have had more horrific stories in theater, coming in drunk, sleeping through an entire scene, and some of them even continue to work if they're really good, others fade away.
Absolutely. Well, you've obviously stood the test of time. You've done a great job with all your career. And I was going to go back. We had a few audio issues, but I heard originally, going back a bit, when you were going to make Candyman, they wouldn't give you the script at first?
No, that's not true.
Oh, that's not true? Okay. How did that process go?
We got a call out of the blue one day from Bernard Mosley, who did the adaptation of the script from Bob Barker's The Forbidden. And they said, my manager said they're interested in you playing a guy named Candyman. And I hung up on him because I was in the middle of a workout in my gym. I'm a religious gym guy. And they called me back. Actually called me over the payphone. So the guy, the gym operator, this is YMCA in Hollywood, says, Tony Todd, your fucking manager's calling you. And they get back on and they tell me to explain it to me. I thought they were fucking around. Thought it was a Sammy Davis Jr. thing. And next thing you know, I'm meeting with Bernard. That went well. Then I had to meet with the studio. That was less well because it was 8 a.m. and they're drinking fresh squeezed orange juice out of their carafe, not even looking at me, and I know what they want me to say, want me to do. If I had no audition, that was a different thing. I know what to do, but I didn't know what they wanted. I didn't know what you want. You want me to watch you drink fresh squeezed orange juice? Fine. So then I heard I didn't have a personality, and Bernard fought for me. Then I met with Virginia. We had lunch, and then it was it. It was a done deal. And, you know.
No personality. If you don't have a personality, who does?
You know what? They wanted me to kowtow to them. They wanted me to, I didn't know whether they wanted me to squeeze the oranges for them or whether they wanted me to say, those are some nice plates. Aren't they delicious? I don't know what they want. Okay, but I don't do that. You brought me in for a meeting. You tell me what you want. So it worked out. We got through it. You know, and at the end of the day, it wasn't them that it mattered. It was Clive Barker and it was Bernard Mose and Virginia Madsen and Xander Berkeley who mattered. And
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I'm a huge fan of Clive Barker's writing. I love his books, especially The Hellbound Heart.
Uh-huh. He's a genius. And just, you know, right, you writers are a weird lot because I remember Clive being on set. You totally could tell he was happy, he was thrilled that this was getting made. But I've also worked with the late, great August Wilson, who was arguably one of the greatest black dramatists. And I originated, and I kept looking, he was always in rehearsal, and I kept looking over at him, and he would always be sitting back with his hands behind his head, not even looking at what was happening, just listening. And I used to think, you know, why isn't he looking at me? And at the same rehearsal process, we had Max Roach, who was a famous jazz drummist, and he was there, he was looking, he was animated, and it made me understand something. Writers sometimes aren't, you know, August is famously said that any actor could do his part. Because for him, it's about the story. And I respect that, I get that. But there's a give and take. It's also about what that person brings to that particular role that you should be paying attention to. But I spent 3 years with him, so.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to this writing that you've told us about. Is it all hush hush, or do you want to give us a quick pitch or anything?
Just right now, I'm working on 3 different scripts. One's called Rabbit. It's dedicated to a dear friend of mine who recently passed away. Another one's called Catalytic. That's my horror script that will not get produced until I shoot a straight narrative. And the third one is called Providence, which is a buddy film. 2 wannabe gangsters, one black, one Italian. They each think that they're the other race, and just some screwball stuff that happens over the course of 72 hours. And yeah. So
now that sounds interesting.
Think Midnight Cowboy, you know, that kind of territory.
That sounds interesting. I like the 72-hour time frame.
Yeah, this is a great time frame. It's a weekend. You know, and unfortunately, independent film these days is harder and harder to get independent off the ground. There was a time when it was the golden age of independent filmmaking. Anybody that could make a film could land a deal on late night TV. Those doors have closed. The studios have won. So it's just figuring out a way. There's a new method, is what I'm trying to say.
You have one independent film that I really love, and the title is The Man from Earth, I believe.
Yes.
When was it? Was that made during this golden age you're referring to?
It was at the tail end of it. But even that didn't get the justice it deserved, because I remember us taking that to the Sci-Fi Channel before it had changed its name, thinking it was a perfect fit. And they said they loved it, they did it, but there weren't any dinosaurs in it. There weren't any creatures. They were right in that movie. You know, so they got their wish. They eventually got Sharknado, and now we, as the world, have Sharknado 5. So there you go.
Oh boy, I would much rather be watching The Fifth Man from Earth. But you sold the Man from Earth in that last scene.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was a labor of love. Jerome Bixby, another great writer from the early Star Treks to Twilight Zone and Forbidden Planet, of course. You know, that was a love letter for him.
It was a golden age of sci-fi in that one. You also had, and I don't have his name on hand, but there was another Star Trek actor in it from Enterprise, who played Dr. Phlox.
John Billingsley.
I was glad you got to work with him since you guys missed an appearance on the Enterprise together, at least.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and then his wife, Bonita, was my partner on Chuck. I was the head of the NSA, and she was the head of the CIA. So it's a small world.
I didn't even make that connection. I'm going to have to go back and watch some of those episodes now. When you played the NSA, you were very much in charge. That was what I got from that.
Yeah, but they didn't give me enough to do. Like, I mean, I was some of my actor friends said, "Oh man, if you just kept your mouth shut, they would have made you a regular." I said, "Well, it's one thing to be a regular on TV, which just means a lot of money. There's another thing to have something that you're proud of doing every day. I don't want to just show up and not do anything." So we mutually agreed to separate company when I got an offer from 24 to play the villain in season 7. So that's what happened. That's why I got blown up with the whole whatever.
So that was the same thing with your Candyman audition. You just didn't squeeze the oranges, did you?
Man, I can't show up. Listen, they pay you a lot of money in TV, and in my mind, if they pay you, plus I was spoiled because usually I just played the guest star, and the guest star gets, the media, he's the drama. So all of a sudden, I'm a semi-regular, but I literally had one scene per hour episode, and it wasn't enough for me. And then I felt guilty taking the money. I spent it, but I felt guilty.
I'm sure you got over it though.
We
talked about
working on 20 class. I got to go to South Africa, for God's sake.
Yeah, those seasons kind of run together for me. Did they talk to you about bringing 24 back?
My character was killed.
He was. See, I couldn't even keep that in mind.
Jack Bauer kills everybody. No, I played General Juma. I was a dictator from Africa who took a boat over, went underground, went into the White House, and kidnapped the president.
And the president at that time, it was
Eric Jones.
Right. I was about to say it was not Dennis Haysbert anymore, because I really would have voted for him for president during that first season.
Mm-hmm. Dennis is another friend of mine.
I love Dennis. He's done some great voice acting as well. He was on the Boondocks in that last season fairly recently.
That's right. And then he's got his day job with the insurance company thing.
Well, I'm actually an agent for that company.
I've not done commercials. I mean, pretty early in my career, I said I don't want to do commercials. But they keep talking to me about it. So, who knows?
Now, have you not done any commercials?
That's something I believe in. I can never tell people a lie and say that this is the best whatever it is that I've ever done.
Okay. I respect that. So as of now, just to clarify, you haven't done any commercials.
Early in my career, I did one of the first Taco Bell campaigns that were ever done. It was called Small Change. I'm sure it exists somewhere in the net. And it ran for about a year and a half. And made a lot of money. But I'll never forget. They give you a taco and they give you a garbage pail. You eat, take a bite, you throw it out. And to this day, I know, and I like tacos, but not from Taco Bell.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of tacos or Taco Bell, and so if I ever see you advertising a product, whether it's food, finance, otherwise, I will know that it has the real Tony Todd seal of approval.
It has to. I haven't done any since then. But the thing about commercials, and I respect commercial actors. Like, look at Flo from Progressive. She doesn't have to do another thing for not only this lifetime, but 3 lifetimes. Okay, because you get a check in the mailbox every day. I get that, but you gotta. I can't speak for everybody. I have to believe in the project that I'm selling.
Well, that's going to be your new hashtag. Hashtag don't squeeze the oranges, don't give up, don't pass on your integrity. I love the sound of your scripts, your screenwriting. I'd love to hear some more about that in the future. What else is going on with you? Are you into any TV shows right now on television? Do you like to watch?
I did a pilot earlier this year. We're still waiting for it to find a home. It's a very famous writer-director that I have to remain nameless about. Did another project for DC, another villain, I guess. Again, I have a non-disclosure, but he could take Zoom and give him a good spanking. And
Wow.
it's been a relatively quiet year. I mean, I got 3 or 4 films in the can, but because of this crunch on independency and independent films, they're all struggling to find life, but I trust that they will. And the good thing about where I am as an actor now, that I'm not worried. But I will say that this has been my slowest year in my 30 years. But I'm getting a lot of stuff done around home. I'm on Twitter more than I usually would be. But you'll know, as well as the rest of the Twitter universe and the rest of the creative world will know when that next big thing hits.
Oh, that's great. I would love to see more of you in the DC universe. I'm a huge comic book fan in general. You don't have to tell us anything specific, of course, but what do you think about the latest DC films they've had?
I just saw Wonder Woman last week. A bunch of my friends were with it. I did a film with Danny Houston. It's good to see him. I liked what David Thewlis, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Not totally sure.
The God of War, but I'm also watching him on Fargo, and I noticed that the 2 characters were similar, so I wish there was more of a gap between the 2 roles. But, I have a daughter, so the woman empowerment thing I really appreciate, and I love that it was a woman director and she broke records. I think that there was more that perhaps could be gotten out of that whole thing, but I think Gay was a good choice. And,
I loved her. She's darling. I loved her on the screen. She is tough. She's no nonsense. I love the Amazons. What were your daughter's thoughts on those?
We haven't talked about it. My daughter is so incredibly busy. She barely got time to wish me Happy Father's Day. We haven't talked about. She's an occupational therapist, and she's working in New York, transitioning autistic kids, preschool to kindergarten. So her hands are full. She's my own Wonder Woman. The Amazon segment was good. There was some stopping and starting in the story that I wish they had gotten out of and just gone to the thrust of it. But it was good. It's important. It was an important film. We have so many superheroes now on film that it's good that everybody's represented.
It was an important film. I think even if you didn't acknowledge it, we've been waiting for a Wonder Woman movie for a long time.
Well, when you consider the first comic book came out in the 40s, it's about time, yeah.
It is about time. Of course, Linda Carter was iconic in the role on television.
Absolutely.
A question that I posed on Twitter today, and I'll ask it to you. If Wonder Woman had been cast as a major motion picture in the 90s, who would you have picked to play her?
In the 90s? I don't know. Maybe Angelina, but she's a little thin.
Yeah.
That's tough. Maybe who's the brunette woman in Sopranos, plays psychiatrist?
Okay, I know who you're talking about. The name's not coming to me, but
good.
Overwhelmingly, the response I got was Lucy Lawless.
Yeah, I've worked with Lucy.
Were you on Xena in the 90s?
Yeah, I did Xena. I think Lucy was. I mean, she couldn't have played both Xena and Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? It would have been like just,
That was what I pointed out. I said, well, if you take her as Wonder Woman, you give up Xena. So it's a trade-off. Were you talking about Lorraine? Is it Bracco?
I mean, the perfect fit to that. She certainly had certain aspects of the Wonder Woman-ish, but there's a certain vulnerability that Wonder Woman has to have as well.
I would agree with that, totally. My pick was Sandra Bullock.
Interesting.
Sandra came to mind. Courtney Cox came to mind because she was doing the comedy at the time. And I thought about Michael Keaton and how he just delivered as Batman in the 80s when he was considered a comedic actor at that time.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised about comedy actors. There's a lot of drama lurking behind those jokes.
Oh, exactly. That's why I gave her the nod. I also thought Julie Louise-Dreyfus might be a surprise Wonder Woman.
A little short.
Little short. Well, they can give her some stilettos, boost her up a bit. Put her on a box if they have to.
Well, why don't we just appreciate the Wonder Woman that we have in 2016?
100% appreciate. Oh, yes. I loved her in the film. I love the Greek pantheons because I love mythology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all that stuff was interesting. And although, her first appearance was in World War II, not World War One. So I'm just being technical here,
She was in World War, you mean in the comic books?
In the comic books.
Yes, she was. Everybody was showing up in World War II in the comic books.
Right. So,
I guess they moved it back to World War One for their story purpose. Maybe there's a reason for a sequel coming up.
Okay, I don't know. I'm glad that the original writer got his credit on screen. That's very important to me and to his family. That's great.
And another DC property that you're well known for that's coming back is Young Justice. A lot of people are excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Young Justice fan. You played Icon on Young Justice.
Loved it. Didn't really do. Only did 2 episodes, but I wish I had more to do.
Well, you may get more to do. Young Justice will be coming back for his 3rd season, so I hope to see you on there. I hope to see all these great projects you've got coming up. Tony, we'll let you go and get on with your evening, and just thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. It's a real honor, a privilege for me. Thanks for letting me interview you a bit. Is there anything you want to plug before we go?
No, man. I just want to thank you for reaching out to me on Twitter, and I'm glad that we can make this happen, and continued success in your writing and podcast and your life. And,
thank you. And follow you. Give them your Twitter handle if you don't mind.
Best is yet to come, everybody.
Yes, and tell them where they can find you on Twitter.
At Tony Todd 54, Tony Todd official on Instagram.
All right.
And everybody, listen to me. You're listening to the Make It Porch with Jay Samlin.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Hey, that will finish the sign off and post, but for posterity, because it was so great and I might have had a little interference, would you tell me the part about the visitor again and how important that script was to you when it arrived?
Yeah, well, as I said, the woman who raised me had passed away. She was my best friend, my companion, my confessor, everything to me. I still remember our home phone number. Anyway, I was inconsolable and laying on the couch, and I was getting offers, but I was turning stuff down because life had no value. And out of the blue, this script came along, The Visitor, and I read it, and it was like she was talking to me from beyond the grave, saying, "You need to get up. You need to honor me. You need to remember how I walked, how I talked, how I held you, and do this." So that's why I did that role, and that's why I think it has such incredible magic.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we had that because that was really moving, actually. I love your work. I just am so glad I got to talk to you. Thank you, and thanks for being patient with the technical issues there.
Part of Alabama.
If you're in Alabama, come check us out anytime. Maybe I'll see you at a con one day.
What part of Alabama are you in?
Florence, Alabama, which is in the northeast corner of an area called the Shoals, right next to Muscle Shoals, where all the music happened.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I am a history major.
Awesome. Well, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
And if you want to send me any address, I'd love to send you a signed copy of my book.
I will do that for you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tony. You have a good night.
Peace.